So you somehow escaped the height of the energy crisis in Tashkent. This year, quite unusually, the capital has also been facing energy shortages. Are you following this issue? And I remember 2 years ago when I interviewed you, when you were the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, this was the November of 2020, Uzbekistan was in an energy crisis then. And when I was talking to you, we were getting questions from our fans saying, does America care about this? Do they care about these domestic problems? And of course, the underlying question there, and today as well, is, can you help? Are you willing to help Uzbekistan to resolve this energy problem?
We definitely care about Uzbekistan's problems, and even while I was in Tashkent last week, already we saw some outages and some rolling blackouts, and definitely we know that many of the houses, even in the Tashkent area, were cold, long lines at the gas stations.
Was the embassy affected at all with this?
Certainly, some of I think all of the neighborhoods in Tashkent experienced a reduction of the supply of gas, but I'm sure that our colleagues were fine, but we are very concerned about the people who really were adversely affected by this. Can the United States help? I think we can. We probably can't help in the immediate short term. We don't have the ability to increase the gas supply to Uzbekistan, but in the long term, I think some of the areas where we're partnering in terms of economic reform, in terms of things like privatization, in terms of strengthening the regional cooperation, these are all things which I think will enhance the resilience of the gas market, of the energy market in the region, that will make the companies that provide gas, I think, more effective as we look at privatization going forward, give them, I think, the resources they're going to need to be able to invest in the energy infrastructure to avoid outages like this in the future. But unfortunately, in the short term, I wish there was more we could do.
Are there any U.S. companies working in this sector or interested in this sector already starting their efforts that's been part of these discussions, bilateral discussions?
So I don't know of any U.S. companies that are directly involved right now in the domestic kind of gas or energy sector within Uzbekistan.
But how about the alternative energy sector?
Alternative energy, I believe there are U.S. companies that have, I think, really terrific technologies to offer. And I think that's an area where there's a lot of potential for U.S. and Uzbekistan partnership and perhaps investment going forward. As you know, the President Mirziyoyev and his government are making a very heavy investment in renewable energies. That's something that certainly is supported by our government here. As Special Envoy Kerry has been traveling around the world and working on the climate change and working on renewable energy. So I think that's certainly an area where I'd like to see stronger partnership.
So you would be vouching for this sector. You would be working with these companies
Absolutely.
if they are interested, or help them to resolve issues if they're already working with the Uzbek government.
Exactly.
Very interesting to hear you say that you really want to focus on the economic development in Uzbekistan, because so far the investment flow has been slow, and there are many reasons for that. And Uzbeks admit that there are issues, especially when it comes to the rule of law and transparency. But at the same time, I've heard many say, including the members of the business, private sector in Uzbekistan, that it's easier to work with other countries than the United States because they come with just very high standards. It's hard to find that common ground with them. So it's easier to work, for example, with the Chinese or with the Persian Gulf companies and with Russians because we kind of know their mentality. What do you usually say to that?
So I can't deny that there are other countries that have some comparative advantages. Geographic proximity is one of those advantages. Linguistic, I think, connections are another advantage that some companies have. But I would say that there are a number of things which make U.S. companies really stand out as a real value proposition for a country like Uzbekistan. And that is the quality of U.S. investment. For U.S. companies, it's not simply transactional, and you can't measure, I think, their contributions in terms of just the dollar value of the investment. Because when U.S. companies invest in abroad, it's for the long term. The U.S. companies like build capacity, they invest in local communities. Look, for example, at the partnership between Uzauto and General Motors. I mean, it's a tremendous partnership.
Long term.
Yeah, and that investment has created thousands and thousands of jobs, not only in Uzauto, but in the side industries and in other places. And Uzbekistan now is a premier exporter of GM automobiles, and so I'd like to see more of that type of investment in Uzbekistan. Companies, U.S. companies that are there for the long run, that are working with educational institutions to train kind of the next generation to work in their industry, that are investing in the local community and teaching. I think building kind of Uzbek leaders who are going to be not only leaders of industry in Uzbekistan, but leaders of industry in the region and the world.
On anti-corruption efforts, we know that you've been working with the Uzbek government, specifically with the anti-corruption agency, on these efforts. How concerned are you with the corruption level in Uzbekistan now? And we know that that's the biggest factor behind the slowness of the investment flow.
So corruption is a major issue. It's not the only issue.
And it's an old issue.
It's an old issue, and it's a problem we face all around the world, even here in the United States. It's something that we continue to work on. I would say that we're getting good cooperation. As you know, there was a delegation that came here to the United States
to participate
recently.
at the global forum.
Exactly. And we're working very closely with the Ministry of Justice, with the Prosecutor General, with the courts. Combating corruption is not a simple or short-term problem. It's something that's going to take years and years of effort, and it requires changing people's mentality and people's culture. And so we recognize that this isn't a problem we're going to solve quickly, but we appreciate that the leadership that President Mirziyoyev has shown on this and the cooperation that we're getting from his government. But we still have a lot of work to do.
And it is such a deeply rooted issue that it is at the core of many, many other issues and ongoing problems in Uzbekistan.